Well, recently I got a comment from one of my subscribers that I agree with. It was a compliment, you know. It was mentioned that they like this simple little painting. It is a simple little painting. The composition isn't that simple. Well, actually it is. It's not sophisticated, let's put it that way. So I love simple paintings, especially, you know, the very small panels and designs and what have you. But what it needs is a little sophistication, you know. And I as I was saying, this was just kind of blah back here, all too dark. So very subtle changes in oops, that's a little too light. Changes in value and color in the background. What is with that? Sometimes that white just doesn't want to go away. Subtle changes in value and color in the painting lend it, you know, it gives some of that, gives it some sophistication, and it can remain simple, basic, but it's the nuances. It's the nuances that make the work attractive. So it's okay if there's this much darker paint up here, lower value. But even in those dark areas, there is color, and I need to show that. You know, I want that to be reasonably apparent. I don't want a person to have to search to find that. So that's what I'm doing. I like the results so far. Keeping this tone down, you know. We'll say these trees is going up a hillside. They're darker, a little further away. This group of trees, a little closer. You know, helps to give some continuity to the design, actually, a little bit of flow. And still, the painting will be fairly simple. But not too basic, not too primitive. So I'm finding myself needing to go into the sky a little bit again. A few of these lines were pretty hard edges, a bit too tight, and also the paint that I had applied along the bottom edge here, when I had removed some of the trees, has darkened a little bit. Now that's oil paint. You won't find that with acrylic paint too easily. But you know, I reasonably match the colors when painting in the bottom area to the top, but it has darkened over a couple of days, and oil paint will do that. The refractive index of oils do change, more so with some colors than others, but it's just the nature of the beast. So that's why I'm needing to go into it. And I probably should have gone lighter than the other colors to begin with, because, you know, it's not news to me. It's an age-old thing. Now you'll see that with a canvas like this, where it's stained in fairly dark, and I'm allowing some of the stain to show through, that tells you that the paint is actually fairly thin in a lot of these areas here. And when the layer of paint is so thin, then it's not dark color bleeding through the lighter color in front. It's light refracting through the surface layer, reflecting off of any layers of dark paint that are behind it, and then coming back but subdued. You know, they're refracting through the layer of paint, but then they're subdued. So you have to compensate for that by using lighter paint. This is the reason that the technique of the old masters is to right from the get-go decide where your light areas are, and then use glazes, and that helps to achieve that glow. Now, that doesn't really apply to knife painting for the most part because you're laying the paint in pretty thickly. But in some areas it'll show up as a bit of your enemy and you have to compensate for it. Yeah, glazes upon glazes, eventually you achieve, you know, the sort of the realistic and surrealistic techniques of the old masters. It was very effective, but if they had, for example, tinted their canvases black, it would take a lot of layers of straight white paint and thick layers to bring it up to for your final layer not to be affected by the back layer. That's why they worked on them white, or what they would do actually is gesso and sand them repeatedly many times so that the grounding of their paint was a good thick layer of gesso and or of whiting, or you know, whatever they decided to use. Anyway, whole different technique, and it rarely shows up. The problem rarely shows up with me, but it did here. So I'm just fixing that now. I think that's okay. I'm not going to worry about this line anymore. I've lightened that. That's good. Put in a few little branches here and there, just subdued, just to loosen it up a little bit, and maybe organize it so that this is more, you know, give it some interest there. I don't like to think of it too much as detail. I'd rather think of it as additional interest. You know, I complained about this trunk, this branch, this branch, this branch. I took one going the opposite direction. I think that's all it takes to oppose those curves doing this. I think I'm happy with that now. Leave one little one in here. This is all painted in now. I'd like to take some of these colors. I'm going to break this bush up a little bit. It's just kind of vague. Yes, it's set back farther from these, but it needs still a little more, a little stronger form, I guess you could say. And then after that, we're going to go back into the rocks. Just what I refer to as step 6. Just a few touches here and there. Probably in the shade they could use a little bit of design, maybe a little bit of color. So this is the sort of the final coat, as it were, starting at the top, working my way down the painting. Anything I see, I will revise as I go down. Rocks, then water. So we still have this very, you know, a large mass here. A large mass, the most intense mass here and here. And this is all a little more subtle. Doesn't carry the strength. I would like very much to make up for that in the water in the foreground. It's not going to take much, but I'd like to bring this strength, some high chroma, some high value, not just in a highlight, but in some of the water, just running across the end here. So we'll mix up a little bit of cobalt blue and yellow ochre and see what happens when we lay that in there. That's it's pretty intense. It's a bit scary, but let's do it anyway. And we'll run that at this angle as well, you know, just dropping down. Not sure how this is going to go, but we'll know pretty soon. Just dipped into a hint of raw umber just to take it down a notch. Pretty high value there for the moment. I think I'll just take that right up to the same level as the, more or less as the top of the highlight. If I were just to go straight cobalt blue, that would really be strong. That would probably be a little too overbearing. But I'd like to bring it down to, what about that level? That's okay, I think. I've got a very sharp line there. Let's just break that up a little bit. Take the tip of my knife and knock that down a tad. Okay, so you see, immediately that's given so much strength, because cobalt blue is actually a very high chroma color once you introduce a little bit of white to it. I think that's doing the job, giving it a bit of a, making that water feel a little bit colder, which I think is just fine. Alright, I don't want my lines to be razor straight, but I do want this feeling of coming down in this direction, you know, like a wave pattern, as I explained. I want a bit of that in there anyway. Maybe not overwhelming, but certainly a little bit. Let's make that nice. It's too tidy. I just get way too tidy, you know. I wish I could live my life being too tidy, but unfortunately I'm kind of a mess. Maybe I have artist's brain or something. Let's soften that with a bit of toilet paper. That's pretty high value there. No, I'm doing that thing where you have muscle memory in your hand of doing a bunch of it, and within seconds it keeps looking generally good, so maybe I'll do a little more, maybe I'll do a little more. Suddenly, because you haven't stopped and backed up and had a look at things, you will fail. So right now I'm going to stop, back up, and have a look at things. Okay, so I think this was a good thing to do. Got a little bit of color in there, or variation of value on color, at least, you know, in the dark areas. It's so adjacent to the highest value in chroma. Something was needed there. I think that's good. I need in the water to do something like this, somehow. Or at least something like this, to help to oppose this very strong sweep reinforced by the hillside. I'll figure that out. It's just kind of going to be a stroke by stroke decision making process as I go. And that's what I'll do next. Well, actually next time I will either have the painting finished or finish it with you, and I'm going to have to go to the store and grab another well, my big canvas isn't in yet, so I'll probably have to just get something smaller. I don't know, maybe quite small. Maybe I could do something plein air pretty soon. Anyway, talk to you later. Have a good weekend.